Absolutely.
We have a new potential member. This is Cynthia Stanchoff, and it should be a great asset. But for now, we're waiting for the board to get to that place where they,
Is she related to Andrew?
Yep. My father,
Your father?
No, my husband's brother
Oh,
is Andrew. I mean,
oh,
yeah, Andrew's my
okay.
husband's brother.
Andrew's a good guy.
Something like that.
I didn't catch your first name. I'm sorry.
Cynthia.
Cynthia. Hi,
Yeah.
Cynthia.
And what was yours?
I'm Sam.
I
Stan, and then we have a
Yes.
Samantha, who usually joins by Zoom. So it's you, Sam, and the other Samantha.
Okay.
And, yeah. Oh, thanks.
Well,
Hi, and Rebecca's not here, so she'll, and then,
I am here. I am on Zoom today.
okay,
Hey,
hi,
Rebecca.
Rebecca.
Hi, Rebecca.
Hi.
Well, we're
Hi.
delighted to have you here, Cynthia.
thank you.
It's great. Okay, we called the meeting to order. We got a lot to talk about today, so I think we want to be efficient and move expeditiously.
Yes, I'm gonna take minutes today, but we're gonna have a situation where we basically rotate who takes minutes each month. We'll talk about that later. Okay?
Rotate who takes what?
Who takes minutes?
Oh,
Minutes, what happened during the meeting.
So, but I'll do it today.
as we discussed the end of the last meeting, Barb and I are going to co-chair the Conservation Commission for this year. Barb and I met separately, like a month ago.
Yeah.
And we batted around some ideas for an agenda for the first meeting of the year. It's rather a reflective agenda, and we'll explain why. And it's good. I think we want to set the stage for this coming year and all the wonderful things we really want to do. I think one of the things we really want to do is be proactive as a commission and really take charge of our destiny, things we want to do, and potentially get some more visibility in the community, which is really important, right? But we don't have to go moving mountains and this and that. I think several of the things, we want to discuss some of the things we want to do. So today's meeting is really going to be reflective. So Allison, could you give us a quick update from the select board? Anything you feel is relevant and exciting for us to know about? As always.
Sure, that conflicts a little bit with your desire to be efficient and expeditious, but just, stop me.
No, we want you to give us your input. And the other thing is that you and David really need to be here with us when we talk about the rest of the stuff we want to do, because I think you guys can provide some interesting historical context, and also I think you can give us some really good perspective. So you're an important part of the whole process, honestly.
Yeah, I had a chat with Barb a couple days ago too about, some of the things that the Conservation Commission might be able to do. One of the things I brought up at the select board meeting last night in my select board liaison report, which is something that we can also try to use in the future to be specific about the things that you guys want me to say during that report.
Yep.
But the thing that I did say was circling back on our discussion, I think it was from last time, about the NERPA applications, and trying to come up with some sort of set in stone processes that can have the biggest results. And I think a lot of the time when those applications come into the state for all the different projects that are happening in Camden, that whether there's a whole nother list for just the permit by rule stuff, but then with the NERPA applications where the state holds their own public input process, where a couple people really are getting notified, because it usually seawall modification and things like that work in the shoreland zone. And the mandatory state process requires notice to abutters within a certain number of feet, and that takes the form of a letter which doesn't show the application in it or anything. It just says, we're notifying you that so-and-so at such and such an address is, this is a notice of intent to file. And, you know, a lot of the time it's for a massive seawall repair, things like that. So by the time it comes, some of those things, including piers, ultimately come to the town for review, that the harbor committee and then the planning board sometimes and the select board. And it's the fact that it's been approved already by DEP is used as sort of proof positive that everything is great. But we missed the opportunity to provide comments at that level. So they decide based on whether they get comments, whether they're going to hold their own public hearing or not. So anyway, I brought up that really think we should be almost militant in asking that every single one of those that comes to the town, because on the public notice, a lot of them will say a copy of this application will be on file at the Camden town office. And so it might be worthwhile to ask for all of the application. Usually we have them in digital format too, for us as an exercise and kind of knowing what to expect, to say, can you give us, even if there aren't a lot pending right now, can you give us, you know, everything that we got over the past year or something like that, just to have in a folder. And because I think the Conservation Commission could help in being more of a, trying to provide comments on some of those projects as a voice for the community, rather than just looking at it as like, okay, well, the neighbor didn't protest. And so, you know, the community misses their opportunity to say, well, hold on, this is, you know, it says here that there's no public space in the vicinity, but, you know, this actually happens to be right next to the Sherman's Point public access point, which is little known, but, you know, or this is a significant wildlife habitat. So I really want that to not die. And many conservation commissions, actually, it's, you know, can be written into ordinances that, you know, they can become a part of the process with teeth.
So when, let's say I live on harbor and I want to strengthen my seawall. What's the first step as an owner I would do? Would you go to the state or would you go to the planning board?
You go to the state. So, yeah, it's a.
How would we find out that anyone has applied? We just stay on top, constantly contact the town office?
That's what I don't want to happen. Because if it just, they'll like, sometimes I ask for, okay, can you give me the Rickson application? Can you, and they are always able to provide it, but it should be proactive. The town, when the town planning office receives things, just like how automatically certain types of town reviews trigger review by a certain committee, we should be asking for every application that comes in for it to be automatic, that it gets sent to the Conservation Commission. And so it would be sent to the chair. The chair would say, okay, you know, here it is. And then, you know, the chair or whoever can decide whether that should be on an agenda or how we want to go about that. But
How many are we talking about a year approximately?
well, it really depends. So we had, you know, there was this, and then there are different categories too. So some of the stuff falls into a category called permit by rule. Sorry, my dad is, and there's actually, I was looking at there's a state website that will tell you all of the things that have been submitted. And I was looked over the past 3 years for Camden. And so they go through whether they have actively approved permits or passively approved permits. So it's probably, it might be a little bit more than we want to get into all right now, but there's a lot going on. And there may be times when we would want to say, ask the state for to provide that directly. All of these are public documents, and they're trying to get the word out. That's why they publish all of this on their website and different things like that. It's just not happening in a way that people are actually seeing. So, later on, I mean, I could pull up the list
I would like to find that.
here, but you'd be surprised. There's things like over on Cobb Hill Road, somebody put in a permit to work. Sometimes it's because they're within, 25 feet of a stream. There are different regulatory triggers. And a lot of the time, you see that when they get comments about concerns, they kick into a different gear at the state. And so, that the state has turned down peers in the past because it's, you're like, fine, just please let me speak.
He needs to be unleashed.
I've been gently raising my hand for this. That I think the biggest issue a lot of the time with all development and different things that happen in town or at the state level is that the public input process is geared towards stakeholders of a very narrowly defined. Abutters, yes, exactly. Stakeholders are considered abutters, and but there needs to be a better way for community concerns to be shared, because a lot of the time out in Sherman's Cove, the abutter doesn't care that their neighbor is putting up a seawall. They're going to put up a seawall too. They already have one. They're like, oh yeah, that's what you have to do. You cannot rely on the abutters to be concerned about public access. It's just not their job. And so we need to do that as the Conservation Commission to sort of be the voice of wildlife and the community. And
So how do we get into the loop?
so there are just, there are a few things I know that a couple of people have maybe asked Jeremy about sending those applications along. I think we should ask Jeremy to send us all of the applications received to start out and then figure out what the best way is of making sure that those things could be proactively shared rather than it relying on somebody to ask for them.
So he would be the first.
I mean, I think Jeremy might have good ideas potentially as to how we could make that part of the system. I think if we just leave it to, I don't think anybody's going to intentionally not share something, but I think it's really easy for things to slip through the cracks. So figure out maybe we need, it might be to the point of looking at the ordinance and what the Conservation Commission does, and saying that changing the ordinance so that the Conservation Commission has to review all new development within 25 feet of a stream or wetland, or we could go that route too.
I think if I can just weigh in, at this point, I would say that there's huge precedence for this. This is like the primary role served for conservation commissions. At this point, it was 25 and 30 years ago when I was serving on conservation commissions in Massachusetts. And we looked at all NERPA, we looked at all construction that had a change in land, that went from a private, or a undeveloped property to developed for conservation impact. But anything that had to go through NERPA or permit by rule, the Conservation Commission put a stamp on. They had public comment. It was a public meeting, and there was an open and transparent awareness. And we worked with this, with the CEO. We worked, we had it on our agenda, and we went through the process of due diligence, and that was common practice as far as I knew for all conservation commissions in Massachusetts. Things change, things evolve. I'm not sure where they're at this point, I can't imagine it going backwards, but I think it's also important to recognize that the process that the state does is important, and it needs to be there, but it doesn't mean that it is the heaviest handed. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, like context, like some of these reviews they're happening on a computer only. They have no context. They're simply looking at maps. They're simply reading the permit. They're checking the boxes and they're moving on. And I'm not blaming them. That's, when they have genuine concerns or if something visual comes up, the soils map says something different than, the engineered plans. I mean, they're doing checks and balances, but there's no context and there's no there's no sense of place that's being, considered. And so having the opportunity to evaluate at least the NERPA permits at this point in time, there's certainly the more complex concerns and issues, and they have the greater potential for disaster, I would say, positive or negative impact, I guess we'll say. So it would be great, but it may require one of us to volunteer, the 15th of every month, we just send a little tickler email. Hey, is there anything coming up? And then as a reminder to Jeremy or whomever, and just then have them forwarded to us as appropriate. But yeah, I don't, working with people at the state all the time and having gone through this process in a different way elsewhere. If there's any, I'm definitely not pointing fingers or saying any naysayer, but I think I agree with you, Allison, in that there's a lot of missed opportunity, or they've done, quote, due diligence, but it was to 3 abutters, and now all of a sudden this massive construction project's happening, and people are visually and physically, otherwise, they're seeing the impact and they're raising concerns that, quote unquote, was made public, but who knows to go to the state website, 5 pages in, look through, the query, and we're just, people aren't designed, we're not doing that. We're not, and you don't always go to the black and white pages of said newspaper that's now, you have to buy, and so on and so forth. So anyways, I think it's a great suggestion, and it certainly, there's a lot of precedence for this kind of additional local review.
So we gotta start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So can we agree that somehow we can get in touch with Jeremy and have him, when he gets a permit, he can forward it to us to look
think-
at?
I've already asked him to do that.
Yeah, well, I think I think somebody should put it in writing.
Writing? Okay.
And that in addition, there's a lot you can do. You can ask for all the building permits, active building permits, and you can categorize
Is that
it.
though reasonable? I mean, do we
Well,
really?
Well,
Wanna get
in
in-
regard, I like that idea because I've been reading a lot about water, what's the wording here? Water that comes off people's property in
Runoff and, yeah.
runoff, and the different ways people who, and the only way we can change people who call Dave complaining that the yard is flooded, is we could make the code better so that when people are building an addition or a deck or a whole new building, that they have stronger,
So there's that.
It's just like it's a stormwater regulation, stormwater ordinance, basically.
So I would say there are categories where things that require new legislation, essentially, and things where there are already like built-in opportunities for public input that are not being taken advantage of. So I think the ordinance needs changes so that different things do trigger review, and that would be kind of like what Barb, I think, was talking about with we don't regulate the amount of landscaping that somebody can do, or what kind of maybe all landscapers should have to have erosion control training, different things like that. But right now, we do have one process that is these NERPA applications, and nobody's finding out about them. So if with nothing else, just saying if somebody commits to every the 15th of every month, or once a month, somebody sends an email to Jeremy or whoever is in the code office to say, are there any,
So when they come from the state, they go to Jeremy next? Or do they go to the
The-
person who applied?
the ones that go through this defined process of this NERPA process do. And the purpose of that is so that it's accurate when they say a copy of this application is on file at the town office of, it's like the little teeny thing that you see in the newspaper somewhere that, the same thing as when the town is meeting its requirement to hold a public hearing, to put things on the ballot, and everybody says, oh, well, it was advertised, and everybody says, I didn't find out about it. And people find out about things in different ways, but if at least we could say, we're gonna,
Why can't we just do it like the planning board does it with like the sign off thing, where you have to have the Conservation Commission sign off?
well, so that is a different category. So projects that require planning board review, that's when that happens.
Right, but we could do that with this, right?
Absolutely, but very few projects require planning board review, because planning board review is required for like subdivisions, and then also new commercial buildings over 1,000 square feet.
Yes.
And
So, yeah, so what I'm talking about is when the planning board does what Allison's just talking about, they have a sign off sheet, and it basically says Public Works Director, Fire Department, everybody has to sign off on it.
Yes, we could
A
definitely add
Pathways
that.
Committee, that's the one that was triggering that, because the Pathways Committee has to sign.
We
off
could
on
add
it.
that. I'm just saying that would be a good thing to add. But it's gonna, very few projects are gonna trigger that,
But it wouldn't
because,
be the planning board, it would be any NERPA permits. We would do that with the NERPA permits.
so that isn't within our power.
But we
Um,
could.
That would be under the category of needing new legislation. If you want to,
New legislation from the state or new legislation from the town?
well, so the town only ends up actually formally reviewing the NERPA permits. That
We can.
we don't review, we can provide comments.
But that's what I wanted to say. I mean, so for instance, the shoreland zoning laws, and let's say someone's trying to build a home there. We can't make Camden's rules about where things should be built close to the ocean or whatever. We can't make them stronger.
We
than what the
absolutely
state has.
can.
Yeah, we can.
We definitely can. So what I'm trying to say about the planning board review is that that was all set up to be protective at a time when it was envisioned that the greatest threat to like conservation resources and all of that would be commercial development. We don't have a lot of commercial development in Camden. What we have is runaway residential development, big, every single house on Bayview Street having total re-landscaping of the yard every time somebody moves in. I'm exaggerating only a tiny bit. So that's the kind of thing that is having a bigger impact in Camden. All of our waterfront, people doing things to the ocean waterfront. None of that is going to trigger planning board review unless it's a pier. I think we've dealt with that quite a bit now. But we don't regulate just regular seawalls. That's happens with the state. So we could say we think that there should be planning board review for residential development. But again, those are all in the categories of things that require ordinance changes in Camden. We can do lots of things to regulate more. We can also make sure that we comment via the processes that are already set up, and that doesn't require anybody to vote on any changes. So I think we would maybe want to develop a list of things that we can do now by more fully participating, and then things that require future.
So you're just suggesting that we participate in the public commenting
Right.
on projects more than we do.
Yeah, just get it out to the
I heard.
public. There's
Right.
all this stuff that's happening right now that,
So we got to start somewhere, right? And it's like huge.
Jeremy in here to say where that could happen. What's the best way?
and maybe we should schedule, I would say at some point soon, like a workshop that's just devoted to this kind of stuff, where we sit down with Jeremy and we say, okay, these are the things that we want to happen. What's,
It's the process.
what's reasonable, what's the process? What are because Jeremy will know a lot about different things that have been done in different places. I mean,
He can tell like Madeline, once she gets like a request for that or whatever, however their process works, they can insert you guys into it and give you a notification.
As part of the comment cycle.
Right.
That's just the comments.
well, there's just that part, but then there's also all the stuff that we've talked about before, which is we want to expand the shoreland zoning protections or resource protection zones. What we have in Camden is provides shoreland zoning protection for a very limited number of rivers and streams. We basically adopted sort of the state minimum standards, but we can take the other streams in Camden and say, okay, we want to add resource protection overlays to, these 4 streams. And we've talked about that a lot, and the way things get done around here is, and I think any town, is pressure. And so everybody can say, oh, well, this would be a really good idea. I know Jeremy thinks it's a good idea. But to get it to move to the top of the agenda.
You know what would be good too is something is like to do like a town inventory of everything that we consider a stream.
That was it.
Mhm.
Because right now that's part of what happens sometimes is that somebody wants to do something and they find somebody to just say, oh, well, that's not a stream. Because this just happened in a location. I don't want to get into it, but it happens. And then they say it's not a stream and they get rid of it, or they build and they put a pipe in, and then it disappears.
Because of what Rebecca said, where somebody's sitting at their computer and they're like, okay.
There's no
it doesn't
name
show
on
that
it.
It's a stream.
Right. So like there's certain requirements to be a stream. You guys could all understand those as like 3 things. And then once you've determined that you have an inventory, we could actually do a layer in GIS, just like the stormwater stuff, where we go out and we color code, or we say each one of these things is a stream. Then it's already built into our system. And then when they go to do development beyond where we're at now, there's already been a determination made.
That
They-
stuff really helps
That just having that done ahead of time,
in GIS, so
In
that every time they
GIS,
look at it, they
because
see
we can
it.
just say, no, well, we've already looked at that. And the Conservation Commission has determined that that's a stream. Because we've had a situation where
Mhm.
a guy came in and he wanted to build something. And he said there wasn't a stream there, and there was 2 streams there actually. And the 3, yeah.
At the end of the day.
The
but yeah.
one that was farthest away, he called a stream because that allowed him to build.
No, he called it,
Well, I'm saying.
oh, right. Yeah,
That
sorry.
allowed him to build, but the one that was closest, he said wasn't a stream because he didn't want that to hinder his building. So
Well,
I
yeah,
found out about it. I went over, I called the DEP up. I said, this is a stream. And they're
because
like,
of the driveway permit. And that got triggered because of the.
just because they had to ask for a driveway permit. So that's the only reason I so happened to stumble across that one.
Maybe the Conservation Commission could review all driveway permits.
That's what I was gonna say. That's where I was reading
Well,
about.
but that's not where they all happen
I know,
though.
I'm just kidding. but I'm
It's
saying-
like there needs to be a preemptive strike on identifying all of the
No, that's
tributaries
a great idea.
ahead of time, because then it doesn't look like you're doing it just because
Right,
they're building.
Exactly, you can't be accused of.
Yeah,
And then it's helpful for them too. And that stuff is really helpful for the DEP
right,
because then the DEP, they are sitting there at their computer.
right. And they're like, oh, it's already been said it's a stream, so we can't do anything about it. They don't want to get into it either. That's really what it boils down to. And
They want the town to do more.
So can I just pull us back up to 30,000 feet for a second?
Sure.
I just want to get some closure on the NERPA thing.
that
Seriously.
kind of
we're never
leapfrogged
gonna
into
get
5
anything
different
done.
things, right?
We gotta
Yeah.
get,
And
make
it's
some
not-
progress here. So I think that's a great idea. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah,
Dave.
that's a good
That
one.
could be another thing we. could-
Right, that's another
In
thing,
fact, that's right in line with
finding other things.
one of the big topics next,
Okay.
which is some of the things we might like to do. So
Right.
what are we going to do to get closure on the NERPA thing?
So
I just want to show you
We're gonna
really
meet with
quick
Jeremy.
that this is
Okay,
the
so
state.
meet with
How do you do that?
Jeremy.
Can you send me that link?
I'll send you guys all this.
That's your,
This is the state website. And I know that people on Zoom aren't going to be able to.
Yep.
But this goes through,
Is that the NERPA stuff?
there's
PBR.
this is the permit by rule stuff. But, well, it actually, no, there is, this includes
NERPA,
both, because, so if you go
we could just put us.
to Camden,
What's the website exactly?
Wonder if we can do a
I'll send a
like a
link.
macro that would give us a notification that one was coming
Well,
out.
we can talk to the state people, but what's really annoying is that it gives a tax map and tax lot number rather than an address. It's just all, but it tells you, okay, repair and replacement of 96 linear feet of existing stone seawall and terrace that were damaged in January storms. Okay, blah, 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 explicitly accepted. Gives the dates, gives, so there's a lot of stuff, and you'll see that some of it, this one was found to be deficient. Reset pins is on existing steps on shoreline, reset boulders on shoreline removed by storm damage. So a lot of the stuff that comes up is like everybody had these damaged shorelines. And then, so they're gonna fix it, and that they're gonna make a determination, okay, this counts as 50% or less of reconstruction. And so it doesn't require a full process. But in the process of going down and fixing everything, there's a lot that's happening. So we could ask, maybe one thing would be to reach out to the state and say, how do we get notified of,
It's
all
gotta
of
be a
these
notification thing for that.
implicitly? So
But if
I'll send a
Jeremy
link to
gets
this.
them already,
I'll
right?
contact the state and ask them, okay, how do we get in, how can we?
But if
insert
Jeremy
this?
gets them already,
I don't know. That's something to
Right.
follow up on. I don't know if Jeremy gets everything. So there's permit by rule, which is basically when they give a permit for something that falls into these, like you automatically get approval. If nobody objects within 14 days, you can proceed with your project. So if you think it falls into the category of permit by rule, you can say this, okay, we're just, and basically anything that falls under maintenance or repair gets to be a permit by rule usually. And then that doesn't trigger the full
Right.
process.
Wait, who decides whether it's
The state.
permit by rule?
The
So
state.
they have to ask the state, is this?
Yeah,
is
and
my-
that basically the state has the system where they don't respond within 14 days
The
and you get to
permit-
assume.
So I talked with the DEP guy about when we were doing the stream thing, and he said the permit, and that's how the guy got that's how he got the permit to build there. And when he put in the driveway permit, he did permit by rule.
Mm.
And he said that they're so understaffed
Mhm.
that anybody that puts in a permit by rule pretty much is gonna get it, as long as the paperwork is filled out correctly, and as long as you send pictures in of what you did after. So they feel like that closes the loop. So instead of like looking at each one of these individually and coming out and evaluating every one of them, they're basically taking it for what it's worth at its face value on the application. They don't respond to it. You go ahead and do the work. As long as you take pictures of the work that was done and it matches up what you said you were gonna do, they don't even come out and look at it. That's pretty much how it works. So, because there's, and then the thing is, because they're so short-staffed.
They're so short-staffed. They just can't.
all right, so you said you talked to the,
I'll start with Jeremy, but then if,
Permit by rule. is
Well,
pretty
I'm
easy.
gonna, if not, I'll start with Jeremy first, but then
Right.
if he agrees, I'll
we
try to
gotta,
reach out
we
to the
gotta,
state and find
dis-
how we can.
we gotta distill this to a manageable project. It can't be some
Yeah, I
huge
think-
thing that
I
we're
think the
never gonna get
DEP,
anything done, right?
I think the DEP just, there's
That-
got to be some way of them like giving you an email that, hey, permit by rule in Camden went out. Boom.
I think Jeremy can,
That's what I was gonna say.
Right.
I'll
Um,
ask him first and then.
Yeah, so it sounds like contact Jeremy, contact the state, maybe set up a workshop with Jeremy would be a second step.
Exactly.
And then
Yeah.
the third step would be, and this is my question, okay, everything's set up, we're now receiving applications. Is
Right.
there a checklist or maybe a
Right.
second workshop, or maybe it's covered in the workshop with Jeremy about, okay, now we have the applications, like what the heck do we do
Well,
with
Rebecca will
them
have to be at that one.
now?
We'll lean on her
Perfect.
expertise. Did you hear that,
Great.
Rebecca?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Barb. I'm happy to do that. And I will, we should close this loop. But I will just mention that the permit by rule is going to get twice as complicated or more in 2025 because nature-based solutions, which are amazing, but we are wildly underutilized in the state of Maine to date are going to go on track, and permit by rule is going to be 90% of the nature-based solutions. The process is, they're going to still have to apply for, but it's going to be less, and so I think there's going to be a lot of potential chaos or convoluted considerations for what nature-based solutions are for the short term anyway. So yes, so the sooner we have some sort of system in place for at least the NERPA, and we have got a little bit of a flow and recognition, the better.
You know what might be worth doing too, and that's to answer your question that you just asked. We might be able to get like someone from the DEP and to kind of go over, here's what we look at. Here's the things that we try to look at when we do a permit by rule. These are the key points of when we're considering these things and things to look out for. We could probably do that, and I'm sure they could come in and not an official training, but maybe an overview of things to look out for when you're evaluating these things. I mean, like, who's the guy that Nathan Durant is one of the ones that does a lot of the inspections of streams and permit by rule, and he could come in here and he's really good and he could explain some of this stuff so that we know what to kind of look out for. That might be helpful, broaden everybody's expertise and
So
how to
does
evaluate
Jeremy
these
get
things.
involved in any of this stuff?
He does, and we could have Jeremy actually help too, but I mean, I think Nathan is pretty good at these kinds of things, and Jeremy knows other aspects of it. So maybe getting a couple people in to kind of go over, here's what we look at, here's what to look out for, so that you guys have a broader.
Who's Nathan? Yeah.
He's the DEP. It's voice. What is he?
Water
Water
resources.
resources manager.
They're just basically the overall thing is that there is not thorough review of most things for any number of reasons, and that they stop and look carefully when people express concerns. And so the more they can know, a Camden application, there's, I know they're worried about streams there. The more they hear from us, the more they'll do
Kill him
too.
with kindness, but be squeaky.
Yeah, it's just most people
Right.
don't find out. And so they're only getting input most of the time from paid consultants, engineers
And their
that
job
are
is to make it happen.
representing the property owner.
Right.
And
See, and if you also ask for the training type of thing, they're going to know that you're looking at that. That's the other part.
they really want stronger conservation commissions, stronger code enforcement offices,
It's to their
because
benefit.
they can't keep up with all of this.
Yeah.
They cannot visit every project. I've gotten upset a few times and they've said, listen, we've got like a Walmart going in and a wetland over here. We have to triage. And
Right.
it's really unfortunate. I mean, we really need to be lobbying hard at the state level too for more resources at DEP and the state planning office and all of these things.
But if they had like unofficial deputized like conservation commissions, that they'll welcome that, I think.
We can teach people how to do anonymous complaints too via the DEP website. There's all kinds of stuff.
Okay,
That's great.
so Barb, you're gonna,
I'm gonna talk to Jeremy first, and then if
if you
necessary, I'll
need
talk to the
help,
state.
let us know. I mean, if
Yeah,
you're,
I'll just start there and let you know via
Alright.
email what how it went.
Fabulous.
so that's a good start, right?
Yeah.
Anything else, Allison?
The McGonagall River Citizens Advisory Committee has been meeting and giving recommendations, and
I've
I
been
have,
reading the publications.
oh, good. But, it's really, again, important that that people who are paying attention provide feedback. And most people only provide feedback when they see something negative going on, something that they think needs to be stopped. And generally, when they think things are going okay, they don't provide feedback. And so the people who are on committees and any position like the select board that feels like their job is to take public input, they end up always getting the most input from the people that are like, I didn't think that was right, or this is really wrong. So anything that you are paying attention to, in town that you think happens that, oh, this was a good point. I thought this was generally good. I generally like the, the goals that have been identified here. Trying to provide input on that is really important.
Would
So,
that be good to do as a committee or as individuals?
but
I mean, can the
both. You
Conservation,
saw,
can the Conservation Commission say, we support this, blah, 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 or whatever?
yes, I'll say the Historic Resources Committee hasn't been shy about wanting to weigh in. So
Where do people make that input? Do you want maybe a letter in the paper that says, we want to know what people think, or just ask for it, and then Janice
No.
sends it to.
it's, that is such a nice, polite way of going about it. And that it's most of the time really polite and thoughtful people are really concerned with what the right way might be. But I can sit here and be like, well, the right way is this, but there are any number of right ways. And just so you can, as individuals, you can give input. It's stronger if the Conservation Commission can say, you know what, we saw that this was going on and we think we want to add our voice, like you did with the peers. And that had a very, very large impact because the Conservation Commission said, these are the things that we're concerned about. So,
Yeah, I mean,
you're supposed to be the voice of the town's natural resources. And so you are supposed to identify things that might warrant input. And I don't, as a select board member, I want to be careful about telling you what your goals should be. But just because something hasn't been assigned to you doesn't mean that you shouldn't weigh in on it. And I think
Can I take it away from you for just a second, because I know how involved you've been, and I feel like a lot of people just think this is your agenda, which it's not. There are a lot of people that care about what happens with the dam and with the river access. So I don't know where everybody on the commission stands on this issue, if everybody is in favor of the removal of the dam for the environmental benefits that we would see. But if we were all in agreement, I do think it would make sense to speak up as a commission, because this is our wheelhouse. So I don't know what others think.
And I think Allison could abstain from that discussion so that you guys, I mean, it would be better for you, I think, personally, if you were not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they've had several open sessions soliciting public input, right? And
Yeah.
they've come up with some different alternatives, like cause and effect. If we do it this way, this is the pros, this is the cons. We do it that way, this is the pros. So I think they've taken a good position, right? Or illustrated several alternatives. So we're at a good point now to look at what the alternatives are.
Well, I think we're beyond that,
Well,
because of,
but it's,
most of
the
the
horse
members have
hasn't
already-
left the barn yet, right?
well, it hasn't gone to the select board, but all the members have voiced what they feel the town should do.
Yeah.
And one person said to rebuild the dam, and everyone else said to remove it completely.
Yeah, I think what makes most sense is you look at what the commission, the group, the river committee put together, listen to each one of the things each one of those people said, and then come up with your own conclusion based on.
Agree with one of theirs, right?
Oh, yeah, you could, but that's the place where you need to get your information, because it's already been whittled down into
Already
the,
been whittled down, right?
so you just need to look at that and say,
I can see
okay, as a commission, this is, and after evaluating what came up from the river committee, this is our opinion of the situation.
So like,
Yeah.
we as a commission support scenario B or whatever.
Whatever, yeah,
Is
but
that-
public officials have to be kind of separate. I mean, I'm
I'm
not, I mean, I'm
that
talking
isn't-
me, I'm talking me.
Yeah, you.
I can't get involved in that kind of thing.
And you shouldn't need to.
No, but I think it's better as a commission, it's stronger if it's just you that do it,
But it seems like it's at a point now where it's been cleanly described what the alternatives
It
are.
is.
We're at a good point to comment on.
Yeah.
In agreement with one or.
Or disagreement.
With some
Yeah.
different, right?
You can
It's
either
not-
try to
it's not
influence the,
Wishy-washy anymore.
No.
It's pretty distilled down.
Right.
I looked at I looked at the latest stuff and it looks, I think it's on the town website. Well, there's a link into the McGonagall River.
Mhm.
And it looks like, you know, it's at a good position for us to review and
Yeah,
potentially agree or disagree or
Right.
have our own spin, but it's
Right.
cleanly, it's kind of done, right?
They're developing, I think today they have a meeting. They've all individually presented their thoughts, and I think they're working on developing sort of the group recommendation to the select board. So you can either go the route of supporting or not their recommendation as a whole, or you can also try to influence, their recommendation. But it is helpful for.
It does seem like they're gonna, I mean, I can't imagine with that vote of whatever, however many to one, that they would change to the middle option that's the more expensive one that doesn't
No,
do.
but there are still things to be, there are still things that can be changed one way or another about various designs, so you
Oh,
can
yeah, the
say,
designs, right.
But
I guess I would just say like the time to have a lot of input around the question, like I think they're pretty close to, I don't know this based on any secret information, just on everything that I've read. I think they're pretty close to recommending removal of the dam and a town vote on that. And so it wouldn't make sense as the Conservation Commission to cause chaos and come in and be like, well, we actually think you should do this. Like that would have been a year ago, right?
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah,
now
no.
it's sort of like, do we support
you're
the
100%
approach
right.
that they're proposing or not? Like that's what I think. And if we don't support, we as a unified group, we shouldn't say anything. But if we as a unified group support what they're doing, it would make sense to speak up and say so and give reasons why.
Yes.
I just went up on the town website and clicked on the link, McGonagall River updates, scenario A, scenario B, scenario C, yep. And I mean, they're all laid out, right? Or,
It's C that most people want.
but what we would want to do is decide what we think, right?
Yeah.
Whether
Well,
it's, I'm
yeah.
not trying to drive it to a closure. I'm just trying to say, as a process, the stuff's illustrated, we could review it. It's concrete, it's doable, it's not, it's not in the ozone layer somewhere. It seems pretty feasible to be able to sit down and look at and put together our perspective on it, right? Great. Without doing a lot of extra invention, it's kind of already, the scenarios are kind of already invented. Whether you
oh yeah,
like 'em
I
or-
mean, it's
whether you-
obviously, I think it's quite
whether you
simple.
like them or not, it's a different story, but they're, that's what we need to do, right? Decide what we think the best alternatives to represent the best interests of the conservation of the town. Resources
Right, yeah,
of the town.
read the recommendations of the committee and decide if you agree with that.
Got it.
Is this something that we're gonna be able to do like today or do over email, since we all need a little more time to maybe make sure that everybody's looked at scenario A, B, and C, and then we can
I
kind
think
of,
today what we
vote
want,
or weigh in over email or something?
well, I think today what we want to do is decide what we want to do, right?
I think we either support what
Because
MRC
it's
has,
gonna
all the
take-
work they've done,
Yeah.
or we create chaos and come up with their own idea, but I.
Yeah, I
Support or
don't,
don't support them, I think. They've already.
right,
they've
so
been-
maybe
they've been
when are
laboring
they
this
gonna
for
make
years.
their final recommendation and then the town has to decide? Because what we could do is, I think there's still a bit of a leeway, like a runway on when this is happening, like is the vote in the summer?
No, well, I think it says that everything that gets on the June ballot, it's like a really, the back run to that is, I think they said they were gonna maybe need to present the recommendation to the select board in maybe even February. Because depending on how much conversation there is at the select board on how wording happens or whatever. So I don't think there's that much more time before, I mean, I'm just speaking, most things
Yeah.
have to be done by at least March. You have to have the ballots printed a full month or 60 days. It's not as much time as it seems,
Wouldn't
I
it-
guess is what we're saying.
Wouldn't it just make sense to kind of say, okay, 5 days after the River Committee gives their recommendation, the Conservation Commission would provide a follow-up recommendation? Wouldn't that be the best way to handle that? You do it after.
Well, the question is, would we be trying to influence what happened at the select board, or would we be trying to influence the information that voters have? Because my point was, if they're not voting until the summer, we don't need to say anything in the next month. We need to figure out in the next month, do we agree with where the committee is headed, and then draft something that we could put out to the public.
You'd want something for the select board at that,
I see.
at that time. That's when people are, it can be used at the same.
Right.
The select board needs, that's when the Conservation Commission technically provides recommendations to the select board. And so I guarantee you that's when any other committee that decides they want to provide input.
Right.
I think it would be basically, the same, no matter what. You don't have to get, I don't think, super detailed.
Right.
But that you would probably relatively soon.
Do we have time to carve out, I don't know, to carve out 30 minutes in
Today?
in our February meeting to
Well, I
actually
think
talk about it?
one of the things we could consider doing is having a subcommittee to go off and do that before the February meeting, right? If we could get like us, either all of us or a small group to do it outside the 2-hour a month meeting, right?
Oh, and then you could have language that you could approve as.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think doesn't seem to be, maybe I'm oversimplifying it. I've read the proposals and they were pretty down to earth, concrete, whether you agree with them or not. Some of them are very emotional. Some of them are very scientific. So there's different levels of data or not data. We could go off and, have a subcommittee, maybe the whole group, I don't know. But try to do it during one of our scheduled 2-hour meetings seems like just, because the next one's not going to be for another month, right?
Yeah.
I would be happy
We could do
to work
it-
with somebody behind the scenes on that, not behind the scenes, that it wouldn't become public information later, but whatever, to just peruse them and come up letter or language and, present to the committee, the Conservation Commission next month, or even send an email out for review in advance and then sort of publicly discuss and agree or disagree to, edit, et cetera.
Right.
I guess I don't know if everyone feels informed enough already, or if they need to go study. Could we do like a straw poll of where people are? Because if there's anybody on the commission and there's nothing against it, but if there's anybody on the commission that definitely wouldn't want to see the dam removed or thinks we should do option B strongly, then I think that we may have an issue coming to a consensus to write a letter anyway. You know what I mean?
Let's do a straw poll. Does everybody know where they're thinking on that? Where they're thinking about on the dam? Is there anyone who is still thinking about it?
Are they
No,
giving- are they
well,
giving their
I can give you
opinions
mine.
What do you think?
My way is to get it back to most natural before
Okay.
anything was done.
Edie?
Yep.
Cynthia?
I feel like fish passage is something that I care about.
Okay.
Same.
See?
I don't know. I mean, I've read all scenarios and truthfully, I don't feel qualified to make a judgment at this moment.
Okay.
I don't feel read in enough. But
Yeah.
it's partially because I haven't studied it enough.
Okay, Samantha,
Yeah, I'm definitely C.
Rebecca?
Also, Steve,
Yeah,
yeah,
so-
sorry, unmute.
That's okay.
Also, Steve, and just a quick heads up, I need to leave for an appointment. I had to reschedule something last week, and today was the day. So I'm gonna be signing off in about 10 minutes at the latest. And I just wanted to quickly provide my input on terms of the mission. I think the mission is sort of fits within the Maine Association of Conservation Commissions and is sort of the role that we play. I would be curious to see how others might want to add or tweak, because I think it's fairly straightforward. So just again, to make sure that we're not trying to go too far sideways, away from what the rest of the state structure is in terms of conservation commissions, because it is advise, educate, and organize, which would be, and so just wanted to say that. And then I'll look to see what other projects or priorities come up, and just email me. Brian has the new email to make sure we're sending it to my personal email going forward, and be happy to talk about the dam project or the street trees with Brian or other stuff going forward for physical on the ground, getting some stuff done.
Rebecca, I'd be happy to work with you on a letter about the.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I was just gonna reach out to Ellen and get like a digitally all the statements from the committee. I know they put them on Facebook, but I'm just wondering if you could just email them to me so I can process that.
Yeah, that would be easier because I don't remember very well. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that sounds great.
Thank you, Becca.
Okay,
Thank you.
Well, I have a question. If the dam wasn't put back and we got it more natural, would it be natural, were fish getting up those falls before the dam? Because I go down and look at it. And I
According
say,
to
when
Dwayne
there's a good
Shaw,
flow, it looks like they could.
according to Dwayne Shaw, there was most certainly, there was no question about that they did.
Okay.
I mean,
Well,
he's a Down East Salmon Federation, been doing it
I can
forever.
picture it, when it's gone.
Yeah, he says it'd be hard to believe that they did it. And there's ways of determining through evaluating the sediment to see if there's,
That doesn't really work, but,
well, he says there's things they can do. But historically, if they're at the mouth of the river and they're trying to get up in the
Well, if they did in the past when it was normal.
right, and the geometry or the elevations are correct, then let's assume that they did. You know what I mean? Because there's no real obstacles between the
Well, if they didn't,
yeah.
it's the
Then
official
that's
position
natural,
of the
and that's a
Department of Marine
natural thing.
Resources that the Department of Marine Resources has like officially weighed in that they did, that McGonagall Lake is historical alewife habitat. And so it's,
Didn't you find something about
I
the,
could go through all the little
about the
things,
salmon
but,
thing, the guy that
Oh,
was
yeah.
like the
oh yeah, there's the Jean Latrow or whatever, one of the people that writes about fisheries back from the 1950s to the 1980s. He wrote a whole thing about how it was documented that this isn't even alewives, which we know are there trying to get up right now, but salmon, that they apparently I read this thing, it was well known that James Richards would spear salmon with a pitchfork at the mouth. They call it the Anchor Falls. And salmon are known for being very loyal to their home river. So when you have, salmon don't really go off and explore other rivers. They come back to where they were born. And so there are multiple articles talking about how salmon used to be seen when the first settlers got here. They would launch themselves up at the dam. But you can observe with the alewives now how far they get up. It's important to remember that the river actually went through a little further toward Harbor Park. So underneath all that buried part is even slightly gentler slope.
right. So
It would be, it's really cool to see them in the spring. You can watch sort of how far they get
that
up.
seemed like to be the least expensive option.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so, well, the options as stated by the McGonagall River Advisory Committee are clearly written down. They're on the town website.
They're on their website.
They're on their website, yeah, I mean, so we could all, I think we took a straw poll,
Yeah, everyone agreed with C.
except Sam
Sam
wants a
wasn't
chance.
100%
for
sure.
it. She-
Abstaining.
I mean,
She abstained.
she deserves a chance to review them and
So what's
give us her
the
perspective.
River Association's recommendation
then
on those three?
It sounds like Samantha and Rebecca are gonna go off and discuss it, right, Samantha?
Rid of the dam.
And
Correct.
put some kind of a letter together potentially?
Yeah.
You okay
Yeah.
with that?
We're conservation.
And again, if you want some help, let us know, right? I mean, we're happy to help.
I mean, I'll do a draft and then we
Yeah,
can
yeah, good.
go from there.
All right. Dave, do you want to give us a quick update on your?
Well, I'm not planting any trees right now.
Storm drain cleaning, you got a lot
But
of,
but we
Excavator, right?
basically cleaned all the storm drains, which
Yep.
was a huge amount of material that we took out of those. We have been doing a lot of stormwater work in terms of, like, we did this job from McGonagall Street to Hardin Ave. And it was a cross-country line that goes behind the Abigail Inn and the Windward House. There was a big tree root that had basically blocked this 30-inch culvert. And it was backing up into some people's home, one person's home. They had this drain that went from their house, their cellar drain, into this brook at once. This is another brook example. Once upon a time, there was a brook there. It went into the brook, and then in someone's infinite wisdom, they'd said, let's put a pipe here so we can bury this wet area and have a bigger backyard and behind the inns. And they basically buried this, at which point the lady on McGonagall Street's cellar drain stopped working because they put this culvert in. And then, so in order to deal with the groundwater coming into her home, she installed a sump pump, which couldn't keep up with the water. So she installed another sump pump, which couldn't keep up with the water whenever it rained. So we went and looked in their basement and figured, we said, geez, how come leaves are coming up into her basement? So basically underground, this culvert had collapsed and all the leaves were getting into the culvert, and it was blocked because of this root ball, and the water was backing up in the culvert, working its way backward up into her basement. And with 2 sump pumps running, she couldn't keep the water out of her basement. She was getting like 2-3 feet of water.
Wow.
Oh yeah, it was bad. So we had to go in and cut this section of pipe out, and there's a root ball like this big around, it was huge, blocking that whole line. And so we fixed all of that. And now we're piping it all over the Barb's house. No,
Why isn't it being turned back into an open stream?
we tried doing that, and
Come on,
it's on private property, and it's 2 inn owners, and they didn't want to do it, is what it boiled down
I know,
to.
but maybe
We-
there should
we
be-
only-
maybe there should be a policy that
We only
can't
have an easement going through there.
private property or not,
It's-
no
you get-
grandfathers.
I know, but yeah, if there was an ordinance that said I could do that and some kind of thing that said I had something that could do that, then I could have done that. But, I had one person that was ready to buy into it. The other inn owner was like, I want my nice grass out back here. So there was no fixing it.
What do you call them,
Wait,
daylight
it would
streams?
go all the way down the hill though. So it would have
Well,
to
what we were
forever.
thinking of doing was, this isn't about complete, best is the enemy of better. So if you can return a spot was a stream back to a stream, that's one section you don't have to worry about anymore. And then your next chance at something else was where that stopped, right? So when you have the next opportunity, we could have put a box culvert under Hardin Ave and eventually tied it into Daly Brook, and now that it would have been a connected stream again. But because we lost that opportunity,
Oh, I see.
I never look at these things as one job. I look at them as a series of incremental jobs, just like sidewalks. Every sidewalk I do is strategic. And I say, all right, I can do this one because I have, buy-in money, all the things that take it to do it. And I know that I've got this piece here and I got this piece here, and I just keep on putting the pieces together until I connect them all. And then when they're connected, now I have contiguous sidewalks that take you all around town, which is, I've already almost done that. If you start looking, I've got John Street. My next project will be Mechanic, and then I'm going to connect Simonton. I got Pearl done now. So now we've just created this whole loop. So at the other end of town, I've got Mechanic, and I've got Washington I just did. I'm going up Gould next year, and then we're going to be working on Mountain Street after that. So then there's another big giant loop, and it allows people to be able to walk completely around town.
That's great.
It is awesome.
But it's not a one-step process.
No.
It's a chess game. It's like trying to get each piece you can.
We should build a game.
It's called Candyland.
Fix the town. Culverts. No.
That's a great idea.
Instead of shoots and
We
ladders.
could do
it'd
like
be
a
brooks and
conservation,
streams,
conservation.
Ditches, brooks and streams.
Why don't we do a Camden conservation game?
and you could draw everything.
Oh, that'd be great. We got a marketing idea here. We can sell t-shirts.
There's a maze of ditches or streams behind my house. If I don't keep them cleaned out, it's gonna.
Thank you. No, but see, Allison has probably more background on this than I do, but once upon, they did this T.Y. Lynn's.
No, don't blame T.Y. Lynn. It was Kimball Chase.
Kimball Chase, that's what it was, Kimball Chase. And they said, we got all this problem, all this wet area. And they just started like putting all these pipes in across everyone's backyards, connecting all this stuff and burying streams, basically.
Like draining wetlands.
Draining wetlands, because people wanted it and it gave you more buildable property. That was their idea of fixing things back then.
Yeah.
And now all of that stuff that they've done was all steel culverts. It's all rotten and it's all gone. So none of it's working anymore. And so we have these problems that pop up everywhere. And the right thing to do would be return them back to what they were.
That's what I just said.
Not, I know, this is all like one
I
big,
just-
it's
our
like
property
it's
enough.
like the
But-
circle of life, you know, it's
Hey,
bringing right back. to
but
the
But in a
beginning
lot
of
of
the house.
cases, they created a new drainage. It's not like in some places, they put an existing stream in a pipe like Lime Rock Street, and that is easier to just take out of the pipe. But in some places, they just were like, oh, there's a wetland here, and we wanted to get to a storm drain here, and we can go across Dougie G's property because he said it's okay. And
Right.
so there's like a long
It's-
pipe through there, which isn't necessary. It's like, oh, it's a really tough problem.
It is, and we've got a lot of them. And,
It's gonna be expensive for us too, is really.
and,
I
and the,
don't-
and
I
the,
just don't, I really just don't think they should be replaced with pipes again.
I'm convinced that Camden was a bog before everybody came here. Cause
There's a lot of bog.
I mean, it was just, there must have been a million streams here because there's streams everywhere they buried.
It's the end of the
Look, Mount
watershed,
Patty
right?
doesn't, Mount Patty has so much of it is rock.
Well,
versus-
it's shallow, yeah.
Yeah, versus soil. So when it
Bedrock.
rains, it's just
Right.
pouring off that mountain. It's not soaking in because there's not enough soil there.
Did you see Central Street the other day? So I go over on Central Street,
My kids played in the water
Is it
there. It's
cross,
called-
yeah, Central Street, no, Cross Street, going up Cross Street. So you go down Central, you go up Cross, and the whole street's glare ice. I'm going, what is going on? So I go in and I look in where it's coming out and I follow in behind the house. And it's this guy and he's got this big hole that he's created in his backyard. And he's created this sump. And this is in his yard, not even in his house. And he's got a sump pump in it. And he's pumping the groundwater into the road. And it's like freezing because it's, you know, it's below zero. And it's half the road is of glare ice. And I go, what are you doing? He's like, well, I'm trying to pump the water down. I go, in the ground? And he's like, well, yeah. He goes, the mountain's right there and it's all running down this hill. And I'm like, you're never going to win this battle. I said, and then I said, you know, what you need to do is create a sump right here on your boundary property, like a rain garden type of thing, so that this water that you're saying is bothering you, which it really wasn't bothering him. He says when it rains, it bothers him. I said, you're living on the side of a hill. You're going to have water that's going to come across the surface when it's frozen. Just a fact of life. He's like, oh, okay. I kind of figured that might be a problem. I said, yeah. I mean, like, you should have seen it. It looked like
I saw it.
did you see it?
Yeah, it was like a skating rink.
I was like, holy smokes. But you would have never known it unless you walked in and looked around the corner and looked at what he was doing. And he had like a line from here to that building over there, pumping the water into the road.
Because he thought it would drain into a storm drain or just
Yeah,
because
well, yeah, down at the end of the road after it went all the way down the street and made it all glare ice. But anyway, my point is it's like, it's just what you're saying. It's the water's running off the mountain and we just got to create options for people. You know, like the rain gardens and sumps and then putting catch basins in where we can to provide drainage for them. Another big thing is when we do these stormwater projects and sewer projects, which we're doing, that's what the bond that you guys voted for, that allows us to like replace the infrastructure of the leaky sewer line. But while we do that, we're going to put the stormwater line down at the level where it needs to be so that the water isn't going from the basement into the sewer. It's going into the stormwater line. See, right now, when you build a stormwater line, it's always shallower than the sewer. But once upon a time, when everybody built their houses, you know, in early 70s, all the foundations have a perimeter drain around the home and they tied it right into the sewer. And we don't want that anymore. We want it in the stormwater line. But the stormwater line's higher. So there's no way of getting that water from the basement into the stormwater line unless you change the stormwater line elevation. So what they'll do is they'll pump it out into the driveways. See, whenever you're walking down the sidewalks, you see all these slippery spots.
Yeah.
That's them pumping it out of their basement because they don't have any place to put it and they can't put it in the sewer. So part of the solution here is not only, creating natural solutions to this, but also creating, infrastructure to take in the stormwater in places where you can't put it in a yard or in the road. Anyway, I'll go on forever about this, but.
Heard that in Old Town, if you have water coming off your property onto the street, they charge you for that.
Well, I
I
had to
don't know if
go,
they have storm.
I mean,
drains.
that's what I told this guy. I said, I just had to stop doing what I'm doing and I had to bring someone up here and sand and salt this whole road because you're pumping water into it. I said, and it's dangerous for people. If someone fell going downhill and hit this ice, they could break their hip.
Stream in his backyard.
And then you're gonna have to suck all the sediment from the sand
Right.
that you have to put in the road.
That
You're
we
gonna
put
have
in
to
the
suck
road.
that out of the storm drains.
Exactly. It's this vicious cycle. So,
Well, we're gonna lose a house on the corner of Cross and Central because the water in the basement, they don't know how to deal with it. They're gonna tear the house down.
the lady that did this.
The Weymouth?
Oh, no kidding. Huh.
He's just waiting to tear that down.
Well, he really doesn't
It's a nice.
want to. He
house.
tells me every time I see him that he's gonna have to,
Below my
Vinny's
cellar
grandmother used to
floor.
live there, but
I have a sump up and it constantly
The
goes.
house is in
Because
very
it's
good
because
shape.
the ledge is so
Well, he's
shallow.
let it
And the
go.
water's just coming
Yeah.
off the mountain,
It's
falls that
somebody
ledge.
could-
It has no place to go.
Yeah.
It's just a thin layer of soil.
Like my front lawn grows like mad because of all that groundwater there.
Right. But just think about it. The only reason you have all of these problems in Camden is because you're in one of the best places in the world to live in. You've got the mountain here and the ocean here,
And the water.
and the water wants to go to the ocean. But, if you lived in the desert, you wouldn't have any of this.
Right.
I mean,
Nature-
sometimes-
Nature found its way and we screwed it up.
Yeah, we get
All
some
right.
beavers upstream.
Anything else?
we've
David?
got beavers upstream.
We worked on the Marine Avenue access to the beach that got destroyed by the storm last year.
Mhm.
And that's pretty much done now. So we rebuilt the granite steps going down into the ocean. That was kind of
That's nice.
Which is really the public's only way to get to Sherman's Cove, so that you might hope to possibly monitor the plethora of massive construction projects that are happening along the beach. So that's one of the reasons these public access points are important, because if you don't have people out there walking, nobody notices and realizes that we're ruining the beach at Sherman's Cove. It's a tragedy. Pretty much the entire thing now has a seawall. And this was our one sandy beach that's been identified as a natural area. And we've let there's even a vacant lot that has a seawall now. So that was a Conservation Commission project years ago, the public access points, Marine Ave and the Curtis Island Overlook, a bunch of them. It was Sid Lindsley and the Conservation Commission that pushed really hard. And it had to be a fight, eminent domain and court cases to get those public access points. And so somebody should really be going out and spending some time, I think, walking around and.
Is there a map of them somewhere?
yes, the Parks and Rec has one, I think.
Although I don't think, yes, and they put, Sherman's Point is on there, but.
Then the one other thing is I met with Richardson Associates about Lake
Oh,
Beach.
yeah.
And they've just provided us with a proposal to look at the whole park there holistically, to kind of maybe create a nature-based solutions so it's more resilient against kind of stormwater damage, storm surge damage. And, there's like, if you look at that park, really, there's a lot of wasted area. Basically, you drive down, it's all like roadway driving down into there with a swing set and a broken boat, and it's not really utilized to its maximum potential. So there's some thoughts on maybe looking at that and creating, maybe more usable space in that area. And I don't know how accurate this is, but there's also this thought of the parks, looking at all the parks holistically so that the parks have more functionality based on their usage. So at one park may be used for dog walking, another park may be being more used for playing ball and out in the field. Another one's more used for swimming. So look at each one of these parks in that aspect, as opposed to making each park have all of these things. Not every park needs to have 5 different things associated
Right.
with the park. Maybe a park, because of what it is more, lends itself to be more of a beach or in a picnic area, as opposed to a beach picnic area and
So
playground.
Rebecca and Pamela Gleason put together
Right,
a
Yeah.
plan.
But that was just
Right.
the upper part.
right,
That went down to that included the driveway and
Right.
everything, right?
yeah.
So I don't know if you had,
Well, I mean, we can share that with Richardson Associates,
Yeah, right.
but I mean,
I'm not saying it's the end all and be all, it's just like.
I think they were working with the way it is.
Yeah.
And they're thinking more about, okay, how can we
Okay.
kind of maybe reposition things so that it's not all driveway down in there. Maybe it's all
Right.
more green space.
Yeah,
That
that
kind of
makes
thing.
sense.
Got it.
I know Pamela would be happy if you
Yeah, it would be,
gave the plan.
I can
to
share that with
somebody,
them,
Yeah.
yeah.
and it would be
Right.
good to say, maybe I don't know if that's something the select board, that's new, that's all news to me. Which
We haven't done anything yet. He's just providing a proposal to maybe do this.
it would be, the Conservation Commission would be good to have them, and
Yep.
Richard and Associates is very good, so I don't have that same anxiety of like, it's just the same old engineer coming up with it, and like, we have to intervene as the Conservation Commission before they build Fort Knox over there. But that, maybe you could mention that that's the type of thing the
These projects have had a lot of nature-based solutions.
Right. That was the whole idea behind them looking at that, as opposed to just fixing it, putting it back the way it was. We said, okay, we're going to get funding from FEMA to do the repairs. And we've talked with FEMA and we said, maybe we don't want to do the repairs as is. Maybe what we want to do is put the money that would have cost to repair it back the way it is now towards something a little bit more resilient. So that's where this all came from. So
In this, in the road, the walkway down from the parking area down towards the steps, incredibly steep for someone who, I mean, I have bad ankles, so for me, it's like,
right.
I have to pretty much go down like, it's crab walk down practically.
Well, that one of the thoughts of is, maybe more of a terraced approach to getting down there. And then maybe more of a resilient, like shoreline, but it seemed like they thought the park was mainly more of a people walking their dogs and stuff. What they said was like one of the main, things that goes on down there.
Concerts there, and kids and.
But right now, that's,
It's a beach. That's what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, it's a beach. It's a
I mean,
beach.
not-
It's a
that's-
beach and
that's- And we've
dogs.
destroyed the beach by making the wall that
Mhm.
nobody can get down now.
Mhm.
And the neighbors have left their property nice and just done nothing. And there's just trees all to the edge. And now everybody has to go over there because it's just a sort of natural, not crazy steep shoreline. It really, all you need to do is look at the neighbor's property where they've left it untouched. And that can show you, what we should
I
be
mentioned
doing.
that to him when we were looking at it. So,
there's like a
point.
meandering path and
Yeah.
it just,
This is on Marina Ave?
no, that one's
Lake
Lake
Beach.
Beach.
Lake Beach up Bayview Street.
Oh,
yeah, because if you go down there right now, the whole half of it's been ripped apart from the
Like 20
storm.
times over the last.
Are those steps fixed now?
Well, they put some temporary steps,
Oh.
not those granite steps.
Yeah.
Those have been ripped apart 3 times, like Allison
At least,
said.
yeah.
And they put some
Aluminum.
aluminum ones on the end to be able to, so
That
now,
works pretty well.
and it has like skis at the end, so it kind of,
Oh,
It's a solution,
it-
the
it's-
storm comes in,
Yeah.
and then you put it back. and the
Right.
storm
Right.
Comes in, you put it back.
but the idea is to have something that allows you to get down there that you don't have to keep on maintaining.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because,
Sand works great.
yeah.
Anybody had any dealings with the Northeast University study that's ongoing about waves and tidal surge? They put
Those-
on a really good, I was joining Rotary
Yeah,
and
they're
he put
gonna
on
have it all worked
Mr.
out.
Jeffries, I don't know his first name, but he's the one who raised the money after the first guy died.
Yeah, they want to build a break. They're doing this to decide exactly where they can build a breakwater to protect the condos. But
Well, he says
It is
they have
interesting.
no preconceived conditions,
Mhm.
ideas. They're just doing the study and it's in the public information. And he had only had so much time at the Rotary meeting, but he flipped through it a lot. And I would think it'd be a good thing for a lot of people. See, I'm going to try to get Camden to.
They're working it
show it.
out as though it's a concert hall. Each surface behaves differently when the water
Oh,
comes
yeah, I
in
mean,
from
we-
different angles.
The lady from Northeastern is really smart, but I'm just telling you what the end game is there. It's done by the condo association. So
Yeah.
it's, I mean, he's a strong believer in seawalls and, but it's the research about how the waves work is really, really interesting. But we actually do already have enough information to know that we have a really big problem in Camden. So we don't need micro level data to know that the condos aren't sustainable. But they want to figure out a way that they can keep them there. And whether that interest correlates with the public interest is questionable, I think, but
All right, anything else? All right.
gotta be careful, this is being recorded, but whatever.
What's that?
I just,
Oh, yeah.
can't wait.
On the record. right?
Whatever, I'd say it.
Well, it's information and it's all very precise, so I would think it'd be something you'd want to
And they-
consider.
they're
We
talking
did,
about
the
doing
town
all
sponsored it.
that.
The town, all the donations for that are going through the town for the 501c3 status, and I,
Said he has no they aren't promoting seawalls, they aren't promoting
you
walls.
say, right, and that's great. I'm really glad to hear them walking that back, but you might not have heard the presentation that was given to the select board,
Oh.
that the primary purpose was to keep any fill that has been contained on the industry, all along Camden Harbor, to keep that from ever getting out, and that, it's all good. So, and I pushed back on that a lot, and so I think there's been some softening in the messaging, which is, it sounds like they've been
It could be
responsive to
both.
feedback.
It could be protecting condos, all the money flows in, and it can be actually doing a scientific study, which is useful. And they're talking about extending it up to code study.
It's definitely useful to know more about how the waves work in Camden, and that's why I'm excited about it. I just don't like some of the other messaging, but.
So, moving forward. Next on the agenda, you guys all got a copy of this. I think when Barb and I spoke about a month ago, one of the things we discussed was really trying to move into this year with more of a project-based approach where we proactively pick some projects. There's a list here, but there's nothing sacred about the list. That really leverage our expertise and energy. This room has an amazing level of expertise in all of us as individuals, both, and that is I say it's proactive. We try really hard not to get distracted, and the end results over the course of 6 months, 4 months, whatever we decide, could be multiple projects, and we could have subgroups that go off and do like what one of the ones Dave mentioned, which was the stream, do an evaluation of the streams in town, but make it a substantive, project-based Camden Conservation Commission objective to get this done over the course of the year or 6 months or whatever, and we try as best we can not to get distracted. And that over the course of the next couple of weeks, maybe pick a couple or whatever we think is a reasonable number of projects to do, and just go for it. And the benefit of that is it leverages our strength as individuals. We can really provide the town some unique value. We put a list of considerations, right? And we'll get a really good sense of accomplishment. And over the course of getting these things done, I think the town will really benefit from it. I think the key word here is not get distracted too, the key words, right? Now, some of the things like providing an opinion on the Mogonocook River Advisory Committee, that makes a lot of sense, but that doesn't have to be a project. That could be something we do like we did with the Pear Moratorium. That's like a little homework thing we got to do, right? And then just go for it and really work hard to try to be more inspired to try to get some real benefit for the town or provide benefit to the town. And So we're gonna throw that out there. How do you guys feel about that?
I think that's a great idea.
When I joined, I assumed that's be the type of thing we'd be doing.
Well, one of the
But
things,
so far, all they've done is come to meetings.
I know, well,
Well,
we kind of want to change
this
that. So
is-
it's basically, we talked about, like, pretty much every month, everybody more or less with, there's always some exceptions for certain circumstances, but every month, outside of the meeting, people will have some homework of some kind.
Yeah,
That's suited to you, but like where Sam did that, tree,
Press release?
press release.
Press release, that was
And-
good too.
I mean, maybe it's, Edie's gonna research X, Y, and Z, and, I mean, we'll each have something, that we have to do, and I'm gonna put in the minutes, which will go out within a week soon, hopefully, but no more than a week. And everyone will have some little jobs they have to do, and so you should look at the minutes right away and look for your name, and like Samantha and Rebecca were gonna talk about the damn thing, but they were also gonna be, set up a workshop with, Jeremy, and so there'll be a few things that we'll be doing outside of the meetings, so that next meeting, I'll say, Cynthia, did you do X? Edie, did you do Y? Each person will say, yep, I did that, or I ran into some problems because the person I needed to talk to was out of the country, or whatever, but there'll be an expectation outside every meeting that you have to accomplish, not you two, and before the next meeting.
I'll tell you, that stream thing, that's a home run right now, the more I think about it, because we have the system all set up.
all right, so,
So that's, I have that as.
And I mean, you could put in the 3 criteria of the stream as boxes to pick from. You go to the location, yes, yes, and yes, take some photos of it, boom, done.
Do you have an app? Is that on an app or just a?
Well,
We
actually,
can-
the app isn't quite ready because of a few
We could,
hangups on.
So
we can
could-
do that.
We could do it
Yeah.
just with,
I just have to start the ball rolling for you to be
Right.
able to do it. you
so
know what I
one
mean?
of the things, one of the considerations is, are the resources available to help us facilitate the project? Like, we don't want to have to wait to get the stuff in the GIS or whatever.
Well, that's why I'm saying, like, if you could tell me now that's a project that you'd like to load in there,
That'd be a project I'd be very interested in.
so I can start talking with CAI to create a layer to do that.
Yeah.
And then it's just like the tree thing, you're gonna go out and you can go anywhere in town and where there's a stream and like do this evaluation.
Yeah.
Mark where you're doing it, take a picture and, of the 3 criteria and fill it in, it's done.
But
And
in
then it's,
all due respect, I considered, we tried to do stormwater mapping, this and that, which is,
but this is,
drainage-
this is
but-
easier.
but the app's hard for me to use. I don't know how to, it's very complicated, which it has to be, but to get me up to speed.
This
it's
one
like-
isn't.
Well,
Yeah.
Dave,
So it's gotta be doable, right?
well,
it was, we did go out and it is
It's
a little bit more complicated than,
It's
but,
more like
well,
the,
maybe additionally,
basin
beside that,
cleaning.
we could have a form. And that we
Yeah.
could print off and then say, okay, I'm in.
And
yeah,
let
but
somebody
then
else.
then you're handling it twice.
I know, but
Yeah.
it's
no,
better
no,
than
no, no,
not
no,
getting
no,
it
no.
done.
Well.
Then
we
someone
may-
who does have the app could
Then you're
say,
missing the location where you do it. Then
But
you're,
also, not everybody has to do it.
right, exactly, that's exactly.
That's
Some
great.
people can
I-
do it.
I-
and
I
some
don't
people
think-
not.
I think we want to have an à la carte list. Maybe 3 people want to do this, 2
Right.
people, and then we use these monthly meetings as more strategy session rather than a tactical session.
Mhm.
The tactics happen during the month where people go off and do stuff and then they report in without making this a drudgery either. That's not the point of this. It's just to get a sense of accomplishment, bring the town some value and leverage our skill sets as individuals.
Mhm.
And I mean, like, one of the things I love to get out and walk around. My wife and I walk every day practically, and we walk like 4 miles. I might as well be walking, doing something and have fun
right.
and get some value out of it, and you learn about the town, which is a great thing. So I don't want to get carried away, but I mean, if
Can I ask you a question?
absolutely.
All
You can ask 3 questions.
right.
Answer them, but
Are you essentially, is the proposal to like create a roadmap for the year and to like all be on the same page about the projects that we're gonna try to plan and, assign out specific tasks according to
Execute.
those? Yeah, and like, that's essentially
Yep.
what you're proposing. Is
that's
that,
what Barbara and I are proposing.
yeah, I think that's great. I think it helps to have things written down on paper
Get some
and
teeth
also,
in it, right?
yeah, and also to check in
Yep.
You know, some things are unexpected, they get delayed, and we can talk about that and I'll be on the same page.
And if somebody comes up and says, hey, can you work on this project? You
Yeah.
can say, well, we're already doing these 3 projects.
Yeah,
So, you know, I think too, it would be nice as a commission if we could get some visibility in the town too.
yeah,
All right, so the stream thing, and then I think that I'd vote for at least having periodic programs at the library because that gives you visibility.
Did you get a copy of this?
Yes.
I'm looking at it.
Oh, good. I kind of thought you might.
So does everybody agree that we should be having some programs at the library?
Sure.
What,
But on what topic?
well, sorry, can we hit the pause button? Are we, because it's 2:00, we have 30 minutes left. Are we saying we want to start talking about this now? Or are we saying we want to take, for example, next meeting and say, let's line up the projects we want to do for the year and whatever, divide them by quarter? I mean, for example, summertime's going to be like low production because people are away. Like, that's just a reality. But like,
some people are.
right.
Right.
But I'm saying, like, do we want to do that next meeting to say, okay, this is
And
our
we can get
roadmap meeting?
volunteers to help us with this too. It doesn't have to be just us.
Yeah,
It could be anybody, right?
yeah.
So here's what I would suggest. If it sounds like we're all in agreement.
Yeah.
Barb and I can put a list together. You can pick the ones you like,
Mhm.
or you,
We
Cynthia,
can
you
submit them
send,
to you too.
Yes, and you can submit
Perfect.
things too.
as long as there's not like, each person wants to do one thing and it's totally undoable with it's gonna take some horsepower to get
We
these
just want to make
done.
sure what we put on our list of things
Yeah.
to do, we're likely to accomplish.
So build and schedule, build the list,
Yep,
like
Prioritizing.
finalize it and schedule
Yeah, right.
during our February meeting.
and it's gonna take some horsepower to do.
Yeah.
Right. And
I think it would be
I'm-
worth taking into consideration with the list is some of the things mentioned on the agenda that are all great ideas are seem kind of duplicated on what Camden Can is doing, which I love what they do, the same stuff they're doing if they're already meeting a need. So just something to think about as
Right. Good point.
Yeah.
They're not really a town organization, but still, we don't have to duplicate what they're doing. I agree with that. So,
yeah.
I
Yeah.
see, I mean, personally, I see the skills in this group. There's the climate change resiliency piece of life. And then there's there's the infrastructure, biology, botany, the watershed. I mean, I see that certainly plays more to my strengths than the harbor, the resiliency. I don't have any experience in those areas, and I could learn this stuff. By the time I learned this stuff, I could have done some of these other things and got a lot more leverage out of it, right? I'm only speaking personally, right? And I think Camden Ken does some really, really plays an important role, but it's a little different than I think some of the things we could do, right?
Right. I mean, well, one of the things that we can do, and it's part of our mission, is like we were talking about, is to strengthen do some of the smaller things that strengthen our codes and permitting things like we're talking about NERP application. There's this thing called, what is it? There's like a policy that I found out about from called the low impact development ordinance, which was written for areas on shorelines, and it's a how many pages is this?
Say it again.
I was going to send it to you guys. A model low impact development ordinance provisions, and it talks about why you would have ordinances to like strengthen the building codes, and it talks about, that's what I was saying, stormwater coming off roofs and impervious surfaces like driveways and stuff. And we could tweak what we have now and make it stronger in a more environmental way. So if someone says, oh, we have 6 cars and we want to just park them all over here, but we want other people to have parks. So we want this big, huge parking lot over here. We'll just say, no. Okay, if you're going to have a parking lot, it needs to have places for water to run off. And I mean, you can.
One of the
different
things that the
models.
planning board has looked at a tiny bit, something called impact fees. We don't have any of those things
Yeah.
in Camden, but in looking at like what a conservation commission's primary role is, it says it's to try to create structures also that can outlast any individual member. And so, it's like here, just for the state, it says a Conservation Commission's primary purpose regarding land use is to protect and preserve natural areas by reviewing development proposals, identifying important ecological features, and advocating for land conservation strategies to minimize environmental impacts while managing land use planning within a community. This often includes overseeing wetland protection, acquiring open spaces, and encouraging responsible development practices. So an inventory of natural resources, permitting and review, land acquisition, conservation easements, public education, developing land use plans. So
We're right on track.
Right. And well, the other thing I was gonna point out too, which is along that same thing.
Sort of.
I was at I was in Massachusetts visiting my brother, and I think I mentioned this before, and the Conservation Commission in his town basically wouldn't let him expand his driveway, which he wanted to do so he could get in his garage, but because it was this massive tree right next to the driveway, which had kind of grown into the driveway, which had been dirt. And now they basically had to make a,
right, because they have an ordinance that requires review for, protected natural resources that have been identified through some kind of a planning process.
Right.
And that is overall what the Conservation Commission should be looking out for. Like, what are important natural resources that deserve protection and are potentially at risk
And identified by some kind of planning
process. So,
how is that defined?
and that,
Some kind of planning process.
sometimes it's a resource protection overlay. So you identify areas that get zoned as resource.
Statutory-based review.
Yeah, I mean, and there are different ways of going about that. They do it from everything from mapping out coastal bluffs, stable and at the state level, and then at the town level. That's where I think Jeremy can help us in a workshop or something, identify, okay, get him to agree. If the Conservation Commission goes out and reviews this and identifies, these areas, can you put that into some kind of a zoning overlay? Basically zone, every time they go to look at anything, they look at what zone does this fall into and what are the requirements? And then you turn on the resource protection overlay and it's like, oh, that's going to require.
Because sometimes when they say through some sort of planning process, it might mean something as complicated as putting together a comprehensive plan. I mean, is it like
But that is one of
or
the
is it
things the
just any
conservation,
kind of
we
plan?
should review. What does it say? I mean, everybody should get the homework of reviewing the comprehensive plan from 2016.
Oh.
What, but
So
I- in terms of concrete things,
how does this play with what we just discussed, though? I'm just like nervous.
well, we can't do everything. So
Yeah,
we can't do everything, but
I feel like we could get easily diluted again, and
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't wanna do that.
I have a suggestion. Well, as Sam had said, we'll all come to the next meeting with the key things we think we can get accomplished.
All right,
But additionally, between now and then, I'm going to send a few people links to a few different things they should want to take a little time in this month to read, cool night, sit with your tea or a glass of wine or whatever, and read.
Or
like,
both.
one of them was this low impact development thing. There was another thing is Louisa Crane had done a great report on sheet map, all the beech trees in town. It's got
And
very
it's
old.
still ash.
Ash trees, excuse me, ash trees, and we should all look that over because that needs to be a little bit updated, and then we have to somehow.
I don't know if that might be more of a subcommittee kind of thing
Yeah.
where,
Well, they should have an idea of what it's
Isn't that
about.
what we're talking about, though?
No, but just do some reading them up.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And maybe read the comprehensive plan, at least the part that has to do with things that affect us, like,
Yeah.
okay,
Okay.
wetlands and stuff. Just do some homework. So,
So when we come back to the next meeting, we'll have,
a little more knowledge about some of these things.
And
It doesn't have to be those things. It could be other things.
but we'll basically have some recommendations for what we personally would like to work on, right?
Right.
With the objective that they're doable, they're scalable, we have the skills to do it. I mean, like, I have the knowledge or.
Like the guidelines
Cynthia-
you have here. in the-
Yeah, exactly. Great, exactly. Yeah, and that we'd be ready to hit the ground running to do it, right? That's the key.
Right.
And it's doable within a reasonable time frame. And then we could, I don't want to overcomplicate it, but, one of the things we might want to do over the course of doing it is we might want to have a session at the library to talk about what we're doing. So invite people to come, and we're going to give them a quick presentation of what we learned, like Louisa Crane's sash tree.
Actually,
That's amazing body of work. And, that'd be another interesting, that's very doable. It's concrete. You could go around and you could go around and survey what trees are still, unfortunately, on my street. 2 of the trees that were on the report have been removed.
well,
Right.
that was the other part I was gonna say. Besides the ash trees, there are other really beautiful specimen trees that are in the village at least, and we should maybe have them mapped. And maybe we
Yep.
can have little signs made that says, this is a, estimated to be a
Right.
200-year-old blah blah tree, and, it's protected by the Conservation
I
Commission.
I don't want to contradict anything you're saying about, because I think this project thing and sticking to it is essential so the group feels. And that idea of going to the library and asking for input. But the mission statement or the mission of the Conservation Commission, what you described is what started in the 70s, and that's where it was, to preserve things we already had. But you were having put on you another piece, which you're going to have to accept, which is to mitigate the bad things that have already been done. For instance, all that asphalt and all the water that doesn't have any place to go.
Right, really, I mean,
So
restoration should be a
that
part of.
needs to be, if you care, you could just say something about
Yeah.
that, as well as that original natural resources, which we're trying to hang on to. You're also trying to make a city, a town,
Right.
into an environmental space.
Right, so which there should be
And that's a goal.
adaptation and restoration
Yeah,
language in
just
there
Somebody
too.
write that in and add it there, because they're gonna keep asking you to help with that. You
Oh,
know,
yeah,
it's
I mean, I
not
just read off of the state website,
No,
but,
but it's huge. And so don't ever feel that, okay, we don't wanna get too scattered, because then you don't get anything done, but it's so huge. Just remember that you have this enormous burden and you're trying to focus it, so if you can get something
Right.
done.
the other thing is the budget committee, I just have to say really quickly that most of what the town does comes down to what gets budgeted for. And everything that we do requires, staff time and resources. And so providing input on the budget or even signing up for the budget committee is important, because even things like, requesting that money go in the budget for, professional planning or just makes a big difference in setting priorities. So if anybody is interested in learning more about the budget committee, that's coming right up. And if anything that the Conservation Commission thinks might need money, like saying, we really need to make sure we have enough money in the budget for GIS, things like that. The planning process starts so far back. Right now they're developing the budget that voters will vote on in June for that whole, next year. So
Yep.
I know that feels like it further dilutes, but ultimately, the more resources the town puts into this kind of stuff, the better the outcomes. So,
Okay, so next meeting will come with our pet projects for 2025, right? That are roughly meet the criteria that are in here, right?
Yep.
You guys good with that?
Yep.
In the meantime, if you want to, we can communicate with each other by email if there's anything that we need guidance or input or.
You want to add to this list of considerations, not duplicating the work of Camden Can?
Absolutely.
Sure.
oh,
So
I'm
keep
sorry,
in
from the
mind-
select board meeting last night, I
So
should
keep
have
in
told
mind
everybody
this thing.
This.
Is this a
about the
copy of it?
pesticide.
Oh, 'cause I don't have that. I don't have a computer.
Yeah, they are reworking that.
So the pesticide, I should have brought this up briefly, but there have been a number of concerns about the pesticide ordinance.
Yep.
The reporting requirement, or the sign and notifying requirements specifically.
That's
So
what it's all about.
exactly, yeah. But our definition of pesticide loops in rodenticides, people spraying their house for carpenter ants, things like that. So a number of the contractors, what's funny is the select board has gotten bombarded by concerns but it's not getting out and the public isn't seeing these emails, but it would be helpful to me to maybe send, if anybody actually could watch the select board meeting from last night. I know that's painful, but we talked about changing some of the notification agreements. I do think in the signage, right now what happens is this every 50-foot requirement, which I believe I supported sort of with the best of intentions. I didn't mean that to intend 18 acres around the entire perimeter of somebody's property.
A lot of signs.
And I don't think anybody really wants that. But it was, so Jeremy's coming up with, and he's also going to exempt EPA category something, 3 organic.
That's what we
Pests.
do. Yeah.
So
Seed
then
oil.
there's that. And then also it was interesting to learn that Central Exterminating has over 700 customers in Camden. Can you believe that?
Listen to that, yeah.
I was like, oh
And
my
the
gosh.
I don't have a
Bayview
seat.
Street would be littered with
He
signs.
said there were going to be 30 signs on Mill Street.
What is it mostly
Looks like,
exterminating?
Mostly rodents, but we don't bait
Oh,
stations everywhere,
Yeah.
which I was like, oh, I wasn't actually thinking about that with the pesticide ordinance, but I also didn't know that we have just poison everywhere in town, apparently. So that was interesting. And so if the Conservation Commission has opinions on that, maybe somebody could volunteer to watch the select board meeting
I watched it.
and bring,
I just wrote something to the little pesticide group about that piece of the.
oh, thank
I
you.
watched it.
We got 13 minutes and we've got a couple more things to
Yeah.
do. Yeah.
And if anybody wants to say AstroTurf's a bad idea from the Conservation.
It's not
Commission,
AstroTurf actually that they're
I know,
using, but that's not
the
really fair.
Kleenex word.
It's
Skidoo word.
it's changed. So
Is it plastic?
Yes, it's plastic.
Some of it is. It's also, you know,
Rubber.
Artificial.
You just have to vote.
It's
yeah, you
plastic.
can vote. I mean,
Rubber.
they were gonna cut down every single tree at the high school and like a forested wetland, fill it in and pay the mitigation fees. But so there's another side to that story, but
And the Conservation Commission should
it's in
have an
Rockport.
opinion on that.
The rabbit one.
Yeah, it's Rockport though, so we're gonna take a pass on that. I mean, I don't know. You're right.
See ya.
I'm conflicted
See ya,
about
Beanie.
that one.
Thanks, Petey.
So are you guys on this? Or are you coming in as outside advisors or what?
I'm we have this silly process. It's the liaison process. So that each
Oh, you're
committee has a
liaison.
liaison,
Okay.
a select board liaison, and also sometimes a staff liaison. So,
Like the Harbor Committee has a harbor master.
Oh,
Conservation Commission, we have Dave.
well, you don't, it's not every
You guys
committee is
drew the short
entitled to.
straw.
Dave, they're not required necessarily to come, but Dave often comes. We don't come to every meeting, but we try to,
So can we
You're
just?
thinking about
finish up?
switching me with Pixley.
I think I'd rather be.
Oh, good. So the street tree program press release, can we just vote to the second?
Yeah, that would be great.
Yes,
I mean, it seemed like everyone agreed, so that was fine.
Thank you so much for doing that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
it's
welcome.
really nice.
Wait,
So we're getting set up for next year.
where is it?
I don't
Waiting
know
to
if
be weather turns.
Sam graciously volunteered to write a press release.
Yeah.
That will go into the Penn Bay pilot, the Villager, and you had mentioned the Bangor.
Yeah, I'm gonna send it to them. I'm not entirely
You
sure
know
who
how
to
to,
talk.
you know how to get a hold of them and everything? You know the.
Well, that was my next step, was to write to like the most intuitive looking contacts and ask who the right people were.
I bet you
but-
Janice knows or
That's
something.
great.
right? Right.
Holly who? Holly Anderson was in the front office.
Holly Anderson?
Yeah.
So,
And
I
then
mean, yeah.
just to get some visibility.
yeah,
of the
yeah.
wonderful
So
work
speaking of
that-
visibility, does somebody have a nice photograph that they can?
Oh, that's a good point. It really helps to add pictures.
Yeah.
I know the only photograph I had it just looked, I don't know. It was just kind of boring.
I can send a picture of a
Of
tree.
what, trees
One of the
stuff?
street trees.
I've got a great one.
Oh, please send it because I took one. I was with Rebecca that day and we were covered in dirt. And
I
it
got
just was
one
like,
where
You're one
we
of
were
Arbor
planting
Day.
a tree on Oak Street in
do you mind sending it? That would be awesome.
Arbor Day.
If you don't
I
mind.
got one of Arbor Day of a little kid watering the tree.
Is it my kid?
I think it is.
Is it Evelyn?
I think it is. And I couldn't,
Outside of her
I
little.
couldn't use it. I couldn't use it because we didn't know whose parent.
Oh, no. You
Did she
can
have a
use it.
little red dress and,
I
I'm
don't
sure
know.
it wasn't the homeowner's
no,
child.
it wasn't a homeowner's kid.
If you,
Oh,
at
is this
least
the most recent one that I didn't go to?
No, it was, I don't know.
2
right up-
years ago
2
on
years ago.
the Yellow House
Right
off
across
Free
the,
and,
yeah.
Free and Pearl. Yeah,
So
that's probably us.
do we need to
Oh,
vote
well,
on
there you
that
go.
press release, or
No,
can we
it's
just say?
already-
No, it's good.
Everybody agree with that.
All right, so
Um,
that's done deal, right?
Perfect. That works.
You okay with that, Sam?
sounds great. Yeah, thank you. And then I had a question about, sorry, go ahead.
So Dave, you're gonna send her a picture?
I'm doing it right now.
I have a picture too of the
I think
Oak
just,
Street,
I think just,
Mechanic Street.
That was a good
I
one
think
too.
just a nice
Yeah,
tree.
that was-
It doesn't have to be a baby tree.
I think, right. So I had a picture of a tree. I think pictures with people,
This is the perfect
I
one.
don't know, tend to be,
I'll send you one too,
I
and
don't
you can
know.
decide which one you like.
This was,
send them and I will,
this was a home
judge. I'm just kidding.
run.
Okay, and then the last thing on our agenda is a rotation schedule for taking minutes. Well, actually, it's not the
Well,
last. We were supposed to approve the minutes from.
I know, Rebecca did a great job. I
Yep.
forgot to do that. I approved, you wanna do that?
I did have a question on here and I think it's really brief.
Sure.
I think it's on the agenda, but I was curious what the threshold is for what needs commission approval before I'm like, hey Janice, can you make this update to the website? Do I need to approve? Is there like a
You're the
form?
person in charge.
Okay.
We just approved it, right?
No, I mean this is different. This is separate. This is
You're the only person who can talk about the website to Janice.
and you're okay. That's okay. You're saying that, and you're great. Done.
You can have her correct the membership.
I'm gonna send a big.
Your email address.
Just a million things to do.
Yeah,
She gets to it when
She's always very responsive.
Amazing.
Yeah.
We're lucky.
Okay, thank you.
So a rotation schedule for taking,
Well, first of all, since we don't have everybody here, is there someone who can consider doing it for February? That's the least,
For notes, is that what you're saying?
yeah, take.
What's the date again? I just
Oh,
want.
February.
I'm involved in these because
Fifth.
I don't use a
Thank you.
computer.
You'll learn. You can do it by hand.
Okay, but how much?
Howard-
There was a report from our liaison.
You only need, the only
Didn't
rule
go into
is any,
detail, it's just the simple thing. we
there is,
discussed. Well,
there's no rule, like in terms of the actual rules for minutes for committees, you only need to say who was there and what, anything that was voted on. That's the rule. Anything else is done for some other benefit as defined by the committee. All of our meetings are
recorded.
recorded.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
So, yeah, and how I've done in the past, although I do type it, but you could go to the library and watch the meeting on YouTube at the computer.
well, I can
And
watch
you
it
can
out.
handwrite them or, whatever. Then you can just handwrite them if you want to. And so it's not that
I
hard.
just don't know how deep you go into information.
Oh, that's the
Really
key.
don't
You
have
don't
to.
have to go that deep.
Can I volunteer for April? Because the next 2 months, I'm gonna be driving my kids to doctors in Portland all of our meetings are now somehow on the day that the kids have a half day. So,
do they have a half day
Anyway.
today?
if I could do the
Oh,
April
Sure, you'll
2nd,
do
can you
April.
write me down for that?
That's great, Samantha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is it a half day today, Samantha?
No,
Okay.
no, just like the next 3 months, I was looking forward to find when I could do it, and they're all half days.
All right.
Okay.
If I do one by hand, somebody's got to put it on the computer.
We could scan it.
Okay.
We'll scan it.
So
Can
I'm
you
gonna-
do, can you do, February?
Well, I'd rather not be the first one.
No, I'm doing today, but you can do it.
Further
I'll
down
help.
the
I'll give you,
line.
I'll give you an outline of how to do it. It will be.
Okay.
So we also need to approve the minutes from the 11/4
You get it?
meeting that I didn't do in the beginning of the meeting. I make a
What's that?
motion, we approve the minutes.
A
from the-
Oh,
Second.
I don't know.
curious
Does
if that was
anyone disagree about?
Any-
approving it?
Anybody have any additions to the motions or objections or anything?
the minutes that Rebecca did last month?
They were
No,
great.
that was, they were great.
Okay, approved.
Approved.
Okay, anything
Approved.
else? Okay, I make a motion and we adjourn the meeting.
Right, poor Steve, you probably don't often see the minutes
No, I
because you're not, so that's why you're especially wondering at what level they're done. That makes
Yeah.
sense
I'll
because
give
he
you- I'll
doesn't,
give you a sample.
he doesn't do the
You're
email,
gonna
so he's
correct
not
me.
even seeing
But
the.
they are online though. They're public.
Oh, oh.
So if you're going to the library, they are accessible on the town website.
Yeah, you can't wait.
I know. I mean, the
New
thing,
computers or smartphones.
Well, you can learn.
I don't want to
Well, then
learn.
how are you watching the meetings? You said
No.
you watch the meetings.
Yeah, I watch the meetings.
I mean, probably could
I
have
watch
that,
several committee meetings. I watch Harbor Committee if I, happen across. it.
You can ask Janice to
Janice
print
to
off.
print off the minutes.
Minutes from,
Yeah,
you know,
that's
a
what I was gonna
couple
say.
versions of the minutes from the
So-
Conservation Commission, if you want to look at how it's been done.
Just
Okay,
come in and ask Janice, can you print me the minutes?
all right.
So I
I
made a
was always
motion. we
president or
adjourn the-
treasurer before. I was never
Second.
wanted to be a
Second, okay.
secretary.
But we have to.
Not
vote,
alone.
don't we?
yeah.
But you second the
Necessary.
motion, right? So
Yes.
meeting's adjourned?
I don't believe it. Say, is there anybody who would like to, anyone having a problem with us adjourning the meeting?
No problem.
No problem.
Talking, so we're off the.
Meeting's adjourned.
I'd like to ask you.
Second.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
What do you got?